Hello, this is Raquel Williams Jones, and I am the CEO of the 1 Million Mom Self Welfare. And we have another wonderful interview today. We thought we would kind of switch it up a bit. Last time I gave you some perspectives from residents, and this time we have a perspective from a former resident. Her name is Deana Burke. She's with us. She is a recruiter for a Fortune 50 company, and she also was a former public housing resident in Caswell County, Illinois. So let's say hello to Ms. Deana Burke. Welcome, Deana. How are you today?
I'm great. Thank you.
So let's just kind of get into it. How long have you lived in public housing? How many children do you have? Give me the rundown of what life kind of was like for you, way back when. And you could clarify that if you choose.
Sure. So as a single mom at age 19, I had a vow to not raise my daughter under my parents' roof. Of course, I made that decision to become a parent at a young age, and I didn't feel comfortable living at home and doing that. However, being 19, I also didn't have a lot of resources to be able to move out and be on my own. So at that time, I turned to our local housing authority to assist me with housing for my daughter and I. I was able to move into that apartment when I was 8.5 months pregnant, so right before giving birth to her. And I stayed in that housing for about 2.5 years before I was able to make the move into regular affordable housing outside of the public housing system.
Okay. What was it like in public housing? What was the experience like?
So you experience a lot of things when you're in public housing. The one thing that I really recognized was the way that people looked at me. At times, people judged me based on where I lived, that I could not afford to live on my own in a regular apartment. So there was a lot of judgment attached to it. It was a nice, safe place for me to be with my daughter, but I always had the common goal of moving forward and getting out of that system. It was not easy to do, but there was also a lot of judgment attached from outside friends, family members, and just the general public.
Isn't that something? Now that's interesting. So it's like on one hand, they want individuals like yourself, myself, to pull yourself up by your bootstraps, get a job, work, move forward. And knowing that that's a process, it's interesting to see that there was this judgment. So judgment can be indirect and direct. It can be verbal or nonverbal. Was it more nonverbal or was it both?
It was more on the nonverbal side. I had a job at the time, and I was working to support myself and my daughter, but it was always because of where I lived, we would host employee nights, and it would never want to come to my home based on where it was. Or you can't afford to do this based on where you live. Or we assume that those places are dirty or that unkept, or you let your child play outside there, things like that.
Wow. What did that do for your self-esteem, or mentally, what was that fight like? Because it's one thing to have your own goals, your own strategy to move forward, but then you're having to constantly counteract these thoughts and words and feelings of others while you're trying to climb the ladder, these defeating thoughts. So how was that? Was that even another barrier to overcome?
It creates a barrier, and it can go really two ways depending on the person that you are. For me, that was just me saying, okay, this is just going to push me even harder to do better, because I need to show that I'm not defined by where I currently am in my life. This, for me, is a temporary situation that I am going to utilize to make me a better person and drive me in what I do tomorrow and for the rest of my life. But
so it fueled you.
Yes, but on the other side, I could have let it really push me down Well, if they don't think I'm better than this, then why should I even try? But my personality was, you're right, it just fueled me to do more, to be more.
And some people thrive on opposition, and some people don't.
Mm-hmm.
So I think you're like me. Some people, like I get, when I'm opposed and when I'm told no, it's probably when I even can do whatever I can do to prove you wrong the more. And it sounds like you were like that as well.
Absolutely.
So if you could give us some adjectives that could describe the experience, the social services experience, food, if you had food stamps, all of these experience from the judgment, what type of adjective would you describe your overall, what we call welfare experience?
So it can be humbling. It can be humiliating. It can drive you to do more, and it can be exhausting because, in this world today, in a regular situation, when you want more or if you want something else, you just make more money. And when we talk about living in this space, you have to balance making more, to be more, to do more, to get more, and then losing twice as much in the benefits that you have.
I'm writing all these things down.
Okay.
Twice as much. Like whoever created the formula for when you get a job, we're going to reduce you by this much. I mean, that is just, I've always wondered, what formula are you guys using? Because there's taxes, there's all these other deductions, there's all these other rent and utilities and everything else that you have to pay for, and your food stamps absolutely would be decreased almost by half, for sure.
And there were times when it should be exciting. Okay, I got a raise at work. But on the flip side, then you have to become nervous. I'm making 50 cents more an hour, but I have medical benefits, I have food stamps, I have daycare assistance, and I have my housing. And not just one of those is going to change based on that 50 cents. Each one of those is going to reevaluate you based on that 50 cents.
Wow.
And in the end, you are going to lose $200 in benefits for that extra 50 cents an hour that you're making.
Wow. Thank you for articulating that in such a way. That was really powerful. So what would you say would be the number one barrier that you face in becoming self-sufficient, and how did you overcome it?
The biggest barrier is that you cannot gradually work yourself off of assistance. You have to leap. And by leaping off of assistance, that comes at great sacrifice to you, to your child, and to the comfort that you have. So ideally, it would be nice if when I made 50 cents extra, I lost 25 cents in benefits an hour, so that I would be gradually working myself off of that. But instead, you have to take that leap, and a lot of people don't have that courage to take that leap. They don't have a support system to take that leap, and that makes it difficult. And that's why for some it's just easier to stay in the system, to stay on benefits, because the unknown is so very unknown, and it can be a dark place.
That is so good. I hope you're speaking. Are you doing a workshop or something at the conference?
They did ask me to speak on a panel.
You really should. You have a lot to offer, and it's
thank you.
Being able to talk to you. So thank you so much. So what did you do? You said you had to leap. You don't gradually move. That you would just have to leap, and you have to have the courage to make that leap. So is that what you did to be able to overcome these barriers and become self-sufficient?
So what I did was when you're in subsidized housing, of course, there's a market rent that they can charge you up to a certain amount. And I believe I still remember to this day because I remember thinking, oh, my gosh, that's a lot. So the apartment I initially moved into, I believe the fair market rent was $750 a month that they could charge me up to that amount. And so as my rent began to grow based on what I was making, I set for myself a line. And I said, when my rent becomes, I believe it was $350, I'm going to move to a non-subsidized housing that I can pay that same amount of rent. And of course, this was 20 years ago, so, and in Illinois, so rent's very different than where we are today. I said, so when I get to that level, I'm going to find that home. And so I went from a very nice, large one-bedroom apartment for me and my daughter that I lived on with the subsidized housing to a home that was converted into 2 different apartments, and it was an older home. And I had a car at the time, and I had this apartment, and it was just my daughter and I was able to also continue my daycare benefits as I moved into this space. So that was good for me because that was not something that I was going to have to struggle with as well. But as most women in my situation encounter, as soon as I was very independent in this space, my daughter's father decided he would not pay child support anymore. And although it was $35 a week that he was paying me, that was quite significant in this space. And so that was a major setback for me in this first strive to be self-sufficient. And at this point, I had a very good job at a bank, but I couldn't make ends meet. I was going, okay, I make this much an hour. I've now lost $35 a week. I don't have the security of going now to an office and saying, I no longer have this money coming in. Can you decrease my rent? I just had to go with it. So at that point, I had to take a step back and go, what can I do to make this work for me? And I quit my job at the bank, and I became a waitress. And I did that because I had the earning potential to make more money, but also while I was doing that, I was able to keep some of the other benefits I had because of the hourly wage associated with waitressing. And
so did you ever think, go ahead.
I started to think outside the box, while the bank was stable, secure, and where I wanted to be Monday through Friday, I had to sacrifice those evenings with my daughter for the potential to make more and balance my benefits and not have to go back to public housing.
Wow. Let me ask you this. When the child support stopped, did you ever think, God, I wish I would have stayed in public housing?
I wouldn't lie if it hadn't crossed my mind. But at that point, I just said, I'm going to do what I have to do to make this work. And it just was an added layer of I can't count on this for my whole life. Whether it's $35 or $300 a week, I can't count on that person to help me take care of my child. I can only count on me. So again, it was another driver.
Good. And I think that is the fear. Some moms don't even get child support, but I think the fear is, what if I lose my job? What if the situation changes? How will I be able to, if I make that leap, how would I be able to, continue to take care of me and my family? And so we kind of it's like a safety net. And it's a safety net.
Absolutely.
It's a safety net, and it's a good safety net. However, what do we do? I believe there's a difference between a safety net and a spider web. Like what about when you want to get out the safety net and you want to start to climb? It's like the spider web, which starts tangling you up, and you're just not free to just flow and free to go because of all these other barriers that we just talked about, losing, $200 for 50-cent raise, which is absolutely ridiculous. So I think that's where policymakers actually come in to start to look at how they give benefits and how they incentivize self-sufficiency. So I definitely appreciate your honesty and transparency, with your comments. They're really, I know for me, I know these things, but to hear someone else validate it and then just articulate it even the more is always refreshing to hear. So let me ask you this question. If you could do it all again, if you could go back and do it all again, what would you do differently, if anything?
You know, I have to say the path that I have taken has made me the person I am today. And so to think about doing something differently and how my life would look at that point, it's hard. It's hard to do that. I don't think there's anything I would do differently. Like you said, use that assistance program as that help, that step up instead of that spider web that you get caught in. And the fact that I was able to do that and do that successfully really, like I said, made me the person I am today. Nothing came easy. Everything I've had, I've worked very hard for, and the accomplishments I've made, I can't imagine being able to do them without that background in my life of really just having to strive to achieve.
Wonderful. So what is it that, if you could tell us, like, you know, every single mom or single parent, single father who might not be able to make it to the 1 Million Moms Self-Welfare Conference Empowerment Summit in Texas, what would you want those to know, those that might have the ability to listen in? Not just even the parents, but what about program managers? You know, and then what about policymakers? So we'll answer those three separate and apart. But if you had to share some wisdom with single parents, single fathers that was in the same situation as both you and I, what would you tell them?
So it's interesting that you talk about single fathers. So my husband, of course, when we met, we were both single parents. And so he also experienced from a single dad perspective with custody of his daughter, that side of the coin, as well as what I had experienced. And the one thing that we definitely agree on is don't let the situation define you. Use the situation to help create a better person. And the hard work and the struggle, your kids will see that, and they definitely will appreciate you for that. I was talking to my girls just the other day. Between us, we have 3 children. We have his, mine, and ours now. And they were talking about their life today. And my 18-year-old said to me, she goes, "But I remember when. And I remember how hard you worked, Mom. And I remember, you know, sometimes you couldn't go to things, but I always knew why. And you always told me, you know, what you were doing and why you were doing it, and it was for me." So I think it's made our children stronger. We also talk about, with my 18-year-old especially, she talks about her finances and how watching me struggle in those early years to make sure that she had a great life, that has taught her today how to manage money, how to only get what you need at times, and to just think before you take action on a lot of things. So when you're a single parent and you're struggling and you're thinking, what is it all for? And you look at that child and you know that you're making a difference in that life. Your struggle makes a difference in that child's life.
I believe that. And so the more that when you're not doing your best, when you're not pushing, when you're not striving and really trying to do your best, you are even telling your children, you know, just the opposite of the things you've just shared with, you know, that your children was able to glean from your experience. That's pretty major. Wow. And just to think that these children are taking all of these things and all of these experiences, they're taking it and they're analyzing it. And like you said, when yours grew of age, they're, you know, able to reference. They have something to reference now.
And that is our future. So, you know, when we talk about, you know, basically, you know, giving to our future, and as a single parent or someone in the system, you think, what can I give? You know, I don't have any extra. What can I? Definitely, you can. Just your initiative, just your example of getting through this situation, that drive, that is what you are pouring into your children. So pouring into your kids isn't about being a PTA mom or a stay-at-home mom or getting your kids in every activity. It's pouring into them in every way you can. And this is how I poured into my children.
Wonderful. Now, what would you want to tell program managers, those caseworkers that are handling self-sufficiency cases or intake? Is there anything you think they should know?
So a lot of times I think when you're dealing with program managers and people working in the system, they become numb to your struggles. They've seen it before. It's just part of the job. And I think sometimes when you can interact with someone that can just step back for a minute and just see you as a person and not another case file, it's very helpful. When you see someone and they take a chance to just connect with you on another level instead of just running you through the system. I had someone, as I moved out of my apartment, that approached my mom, and this one always makes me a little, gets me a little worked up, but he came up to my mom and he goes, "I just want to tell you one thing about your daughter." And she was like, "Oh no, what?" And he goes, "I watch that girl get up at 6 o'clock every morning with that baby, rain, snow, whatever, and go to work." And he goes, "She usually doesn't come home until 6 or 8 o'clock at night with that baby. And I know that she's been gone working all day or going to school to make her life better." And so he related to me on that personal level. I wasn't just another resident in this apartment complex. I was a single mom trying to make it work. And that really obviously struck a chord with me and has stuck with me all of my life.
Amen. Wow. And probably gave you even the more motivation.
Absolutely. And when you think no one is noticing your struggle or noticing what you're doing to make it better and someone does, that is awesome.
Wow. That is awesome. So what would you say to policymakers that make these welfare policies? What would you say to them?
So as we spoke about earlier, it needs to really be a step-down approach off of this. When we talk about that extra 50 cents and you lose all of these various benefits. So it's like every benefit is siloed, and they're not looking at the overall amount that you're getting. So you go here for daycare, you go here for your medical and your food assistance, you go here for your apartment, and each one takes their chunk off when you get that increase. I think it needs to be, they need to talk more to where they understand that you're losing more than just that 50 cents an hour. And I always said, take half of my raise. If I'm making an extra 50 cents, take 25 cents overall in benefits so that I know that bettering myself is not going to end up making things more uncomfortable in the future. And ultimately, by doing that, we would spend less, I believe, in our welfare system because we would have more people able to step out of the system.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So do you really think that the system is there to help you, or does it create more barriers to keep people there?
I think it does both, and it's really in how you utilize it. Unfortunately, we all don't have the same mindset. We all don't have the same support systems. We don't have people that we can go to and talk things through, and then our system sometimes makes it difficult to get to those resources. So for some people, it is a barrier, and for others, it is a stepping stone. And I think our system is broken so much that it becomes a barrier. What was meant to help has become this barrier in so many lifestyles because of the way that it is formatted.
Wonderful. Wow, that was wonderful. Thank you so much, Deana, for just sharing some very powerful insight from your life. And, we're going to send this out to public housing agencies across the United States and even policymakers and parents so that we can at least start to have this very, very important dialogue and that we could start to move that pendulum towards ways that lean more towards self-sufficiency, upward mobility, and I think the things you've talked about on this interview are the absolute cornerstones, the absolute areas that we have to dig a little deeper and in order to adequately address. So I want to just thank you for sharing with me today. Anything else you want to share?
This is just something that is very close to my heart because I have lived in this world. And when I think about my life today and I think about that apartment and starting out as a young mom, and then I look at my family today and I look at 2 cars in the driveway and a 3,000 plus square foot home, I could have never dreamed that that would be my life. At 19, single mom, it was a dream. But I was able to get there with hard work. And anyone in the system right now that is in the same circumstances can be there in their future. They just have to strive for it. And what I thought was just a dream is now my reality.
Wonderful. Wow. Will you be at the 1 Million Mom Self-Welfare Conference?
Yes, I will.
You will, and I look forward to meeting you there. Again, thank you so much. You're listening to 1 Million Mom Self-Welfare. I'm Raquel Williams, and this was an interview from Deana Burke, again, a former public housing resident and now a recruiter for one of the top Fortune 50 companies. Thank you, Deana.
Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.